good to see you. Welcome.
Welcome back to another episode of Radical Narrative. I'm your host, Mylan Tatusis, coming at you from Poundmaker Indian Reserve 114, Treaty 6 territory, smack dab in the middle of the prairie. We're bringing to you a very special episode today. It's a rebroadcast from K103.7 in Kanawake. We do have permission to rebroadcast this. I want to give credit to K103.7 out there in Kanawake, Mohawk territory. What started out as an online conversation around meat pies became a much larger conversation about identity, ancestry, representation, and belonging. In this rebroadcast from K103.7 Party Line Talk Show, Taiaiake Alfred joins Joe Delaronde to discuss the controversy surrounding a social media personality claiming Mohawk identity and representing Mohawk culture online. Together, they explore conversations and questions around membership, lived experience, accountability, and respect. And ultimately, the challenges Indigenous nations face as social media increasingly shapes public understandings of our nations and communities. This episode offers a thoughtful discussion on the difference between ancestry and community, the responsibilities that come with representation, and why these conversations matter for Indigenous nations today. Again, originally broadcast by K103.7 in Kanawake, we do have permission to rebroadcast this to you. So shout out to K103.7. In particular, shout out to station manager Dennis Stacy for promptly responding to our emails and taking our call. So here's the conversation on K103.7 with Taiaiake Alfred talking on the K103.7 Party Line Talk Show.
Welcome back to the second half of the Duatarda, the Party Line Talk Show. Joe Delaronde in for Herb Rice today. And as most people have noticed, or many, if not most people have noticed, there was a little back and forth going on through the weekend. And I think what was interesting was it started off as a lot of fun and joking, and then it turned into something different. And we're talking, of course, about the meat pie controversy. And joining us on the line, actually live in studio, is Taiaiake Alfred. And first of all, welcome to the show. Haven't interviewed you in a long time.
So. All right, it's good to be here.
Yeah. So, on the weekend, there's a little video that gets posted about making of Mohawk meat pie. And the big controversy, of course, the onions. And there were tons of jokes going around. But at a certain point, it took a turn, and people got upset. Why was that?
I think it's because it turned from being something silly and humorous, like you say, to something where it started to really impact people in terms of who this person was claiming to be, the positioning they were taking in relation to Kanawake and representing us to the wider world. You know, this is a person that has a lot of followers on social media, and then especially when it became known and I guess people saw that the Food Channel, a big television show, was profiling her. And I think it went from a kind of funny thing to be talking about to something where, hey, this person is really shaping perceptions about who we are. And people started to put a lot more focus on what she was saying and how she was positioning herself in relation to the community. And, you know, there's some people that were in on this a long time ago. I found out since. But I think it's really come around now because of that person's response to the critiques or to being held accountable or to even people asking questions. I had never really encountered it before in terms of what this person was doing. I don't have TikTok or anything like that. But, you know, seeing the response and looking at the type of insulting language that was used in relation to our Kanawake woman, questioning her and so forth, that really turned people in terms of, okay, let's take this seriously now. Like, who is this person and what is she saying?
Yeah, it was interesting that at first, I think 99.9% of people had no idea who she was. Paul Grafe did reach out and track her down and got some background on her, and found out that she does have roots in Kanawake, and even that upset some people. I'm actually glad he did it because it gave some context to what's going on, because there is some relationship, and we don't want to be accused of being Fox News, only showing the one side of the story. But the fact of the matter is, if I would safely say that 75-80% of the community was very upset about this.
Yeah,
because it did start as something fun.
I mean, you think about what it triggers, right? It started off as something fun, but then you start realizing, hey, this person is really stepping into a space of the colonizer, taking away our voice, speaking over people, claiming what's not theirs. Like, what is it when you have a root ancestor in a community, but don't have any lived experience and don't meet the criteria of that community for being a member and so forth, and then yet go all over and speak in terms of ours, we, Mohawks, this. I mean, I everybody in town knows me and my family. I could say that I have a root in the southern part of England. I've been there once or twice. How seriously would I be taken if I went around the world and start talking about what it is to be an English person and start talking about their food and their history and their recipe? Everyone would laugh at me. And that's why people are not taking her seriously. And yet she stands on that, and she defends that.
It reminds me, the reaction here, of a few years ago. I remember Ross Montour was the talk show host at the time, before he got elected. And actually, maybe this is what got him elected. Guillaume Carl was on the talk show. And at the time, the Micanacs were coming up and making a big noise about how they have all the rights and stuff like that. And of course, people in Kanawake weren't too impressed. But when Guillaume Carl came on, the reaction was incredible. And I remember Grand Chief Norton at the time was at a meeting. And I was actually filling in because Joe called up and said, I'm stuck here. Can you pinch hit? Because at that time, everybody had gone off for lunch now. I couldn't find anybody. He says, just go in, pinch hit till I get there. And Guillaume Carl starts to talk, and him and Ross really started to get into it. And Ross asked all the right questions. Anyway, in comes Joe Norton flying in. He says, it's a wonder I didn't get a ticket, because he was so upset about the conversation that was happening and the entitlement.
It triggers something deep inside all of us. So we can laugh at it at first, but when you have someone taking that essential part of you that the Canadian government has tried to erase for so long and so hard, and then with a sense of entitlement coming and taking it and using it, not to benefit Kanawake, not to stand in a space to say, hey, I'm proud of that 10% blood that I have, and I'm going to be here making the world recognize Mohawk sovereignty and understand the injustices of our people and so forth. She says she does that, but she's just out there making money. And everybody can see that. It's just a platform for her to put herself forward. And everybody in Kanawake knows that 10% blood is a potential link to the community. It's something that you can build on. No one's going to say she doesn't have connections, because she does. But why are you denying the 90% of you that is non-Mohawk, first of all? And secondly, what have you done to earn the trust and the respect of the people of Kanawake to give you the voice to go around the world saying that you represent us?
And I guess that's it, because people didn't know her. And even though she says that, and I'm not going to doubt her, she said she spent some time here, but it's not like she was very visible. It was not like she was saying, this is my career that I'm doing, and if you don't mind, I can point out some of the things that we do. But it's that sense of I'm speaking for, and I think that's really what got people steamed up.
Yeah, that, and the fact that in response to people like, say, Taylor Goodleaf and Carrie Lane, and people have come back at her and questioned her, and a lot of others too, Marnie Jacobs, she flashes her status card. Now, everybody in Kanawake knows, and people in the wider community who are listening to this should know, that you can be completely non-native and have a status card. That proves nothing. All it proves is that one of your ancestors had status in an Indian band, and that it was passed on through your family. So that's neither here nor there, and to prove that you're actually Mohawk. So my response to her was basically, you're going to start talking about our land rights. You're going to start talking about our ancestral origins, and you better understand the facts if you're going to be standing as a Mohawk representing that. And so I kind of came back on that in terms of, well, she's putting out false information. And I didn't question her being a Mohawk in terms of lineage. I questioned her earning the right to speak for us. And I think that's a fair criticism, although, there's a lot of other criticism that can be labeled. But the one that I wanted to stand on was, okay, you have 10% blood. What are you doing with that? Are you monetizing it, or are you actually using it as a entree, as a open door to come into the community and spend more than one summer when you're a little kid to actually learn what it is to be Kanawake Rono, and then to accurately reflect, what it is to be one of us.
Yeah, there are plenty of people. We all have cousins or relatives or friends who have, in maybe the not that distant past, have a grandmother who married out, and the family has moved on to whether it's Detroit or New York or Long Island or whatever, and many of them, and I've certainly seen it, and they still have pride in their roots, and they might have a dream catcher in the house or something like that, but they don't go around, waving the big flag, and it's one of those things. It's when you get crushed into this little postage stamp, as we call it, I guess we get very defensive.
Rightly so, because the process that the Canadian government instituted to get rid of us is still underway. The whole idea of Indian status in Canada, they're extending it to include generations back, so where you have one root ancestor, and that's going to give you an equal status in the Canadian government's eyes to you and me.
And it's something we haven't talked about because, as many know, I did work at the Mohawk Council of Kanawake for many years, and one of the things that we talked about at length was, and it was a few years ago when they made that change, and the numbers of people who could apply for membership everywhere through the federal government are astounding, and it's only a matter of time till there are more Mohawks registered in Ottawa than there are Mohawks in Kanawake. The gap continues to close.
And that's the danger. We're trying to get at the heart of the matter. The danger is that people like her are going to become the majority of who the Mohawks are, and they're going to speak for us. Now, we've seen it with pretendianism in universities and in government organizations and so forth, where people who have very little to no ties, lineage or cultural, get recognized and get status, and the outside organizations favor those people over the actual Mohawks who live and were born and have the criteria according to our own sense of who we are. Because guess what? They think and act just like the outside. And we don't. We're problems. We want our land back. We want our sovereignty. We want a lot of things that's very hard for the outside to accept. These people come around and look at what this person is doing online. It's just straight up American consumerism, and there's nothing different about her from the average Brooklynite except the fact that she claims to be Mohawk in her ancestry. Whereas, what do actual Mohawks represent?
And we see, and Ganasadaga had its own problems over the years because they had elections that were run through the federal system, and you had the big problem of people who don't live there outnumbering the people in Ganasadaga and influencing the vote, and people there were always upset, and that's why they changed the rules and went back to I forget what they're calling it now, but it's more local. But before that, and that's not that long ago, anybody could run, and you could vote for somebody who wasn't even from Ganasadaga.
And that's why these people kind of like brushing it off or criticizing us, online, and got these other natives or so-called reconnecting native segment of the online community and so forth. Oh, what are you guys so upset about and all this? Well, this is it. It goes from being cringeworthy and just stupid to being dangerous when this dynamic starts to come into play, when the outside society and government start to recognize people like her over us. And this is contributing to that, and people need to understand that.
Well, we've seen some of the effects that it made big news. Buffy St. Marie, for example, made a whole career of it, and the CBC actually did the research and found that there was no roots. She was Italian.
You know, and this person that we're talking about is saying, well, I'm not a pretendian because pretendians have zero connection and I have some. Well, just as much of a pretendian problem, we have a descendian problem. A descendian problem is someone who has a distant ancestor, like her, a grandmother or a great-grandmother, zero lived experience, zero connection to the community otherwise, and goes about platforming themselves and speaking and getting acknowledgement and benefit, because we have to acknowledge she wouldn't be on that TV show if she didn't claim to be Mohawk, right? Just like people don't get scholarships or academic jobs and so forth if they don't claim to be Indigenous, even though they have no experience with that and no connection beyond that instance of claiming a material gain for their lineage.
And it's tough to be somebody like the selection committee at let's say McGill or Concordia, and they're trying to do the right thing with reconciliation and let's make sure we give opportunities, but then sometimes people are slipping through the cracks. Maybe they don't all have a bad intent, or they don't all just want a free rides, because some of them are, they're truly proud of their roots, and maybe that's what they identify. Maybe they identify with the 10% because they just hate the rest of the world and they think the Indigenous ways are the best. But the fact is, it becomes so difficult to take care of this issue and address it and move forward.
And that's important to reemphasize, Joe, I think, in all of this, is that, no one's denying the possibility of reconnection or community integration, even if you only have 10%. Or our people are like amazingly generous after everything that's happened to us. Some people are saying, oh, I traced her lineage, she has Wolf Clan. Yeah, okay, great, all of that. But when it comes down to it, it's also the character of the person and the amount of respect they show for the community. And people were kind of like here or there on this at first, but then people start sharing screenshots of the way she was talking to them, telling us that our water is like raw. There's something wrong with us because we drink the water here. Our food is like raw sewage. I have the screenshots. I could read them to you. It's very insulting and frankly racist. So you can tell that she's unfortunately representing some of the worst aspects of American society in the way they view natives, because she's denigrating us in terms of our poverty, our backwardness, and she's just speaking as a racist American to people who are coming and asking her for answers. And that to me put me over the edge. I was like, okay, aside from the fact that she's talking about land rights where she has no business doing that because she doesn't know anything, look at the way she's talking to all these women. And that's unacceptable. Something has to be said and something has to be done.
Well, I guess the something being done is the fact that there's such an outcry. And I was shocked because I didn't know any of the. It all happened so quickly.
Yeah.
The onion thing was kind of funny because actually and after a lot of discussion, you find that quite a few people actually put a little bit of onion in there just to give it that little bit, or a little bit of garlic powder.
I squeeze lime in my corn soup.
Oh, you should be removed from the banned list. I remember Chad Rice, and I hope he's listening. He had the restaurant, Old Malone's. Chad Rice one time made, a few times, he made meat pie, and he made a good meat pie. But he put, I guess it was jalapeno in there and a little bit of oregano. And he would cut out a little pepper and put that on the top, out of dough. And it was delicious. And we never gave it a second thought. Now we're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get removed from the territory. Oh man.
But see, this is all fun, right? Like, so we can debate that. And this person is either completely egomaniacal or a sociopath that cannot see that it's not about the onions in her meat pie. It's about the way she talks to people. It's about her false positioning, and it's about her stealing the voice of Native women. She cannot accept that, and she will not accept that. And that's something that needs to happen in order for her to continue to kind of develop this relationship with the community.
I foresee an issue there where it is probably going to work its way back, and it's not going to end well in terms of her career. We saw that with Buffy St. Marie. It seemed like she would be able to contain that, but it blew up. the false pretenses, the pretendian, and this one, like you say, the descendian question that comes up. But you look at the other side of this. We have a lot of people who are non-native, who've worked here for a long time, who are fully respected because they've learned how to say, I love meat pie. I learned this is great stuff. It's not my stuff. I'm learning it from Ted Bird. God bless Ted Bird. He would always be talking about Joanne Patton's pie, and we laugh. But he made very clear reference that it was from here. This was something that was done here. He didn't try and steal it. Didn't try and claim it outside. And he didn't claim to be Mohawk either. Even though at the time I remember some people, oh, he's not from town. Who the hell is he? But he was very supportive, during that time. And that's what's missing in this story.
Yeah, I mean, our people, if you look throughout the history of our people, we've been very welcoming, very open, very adaptive and adoptive. But the one thing we do demand is respect. And when you disrespect Kanawake, you're going to feel the wrath of Kanawake. And that's what this person doesn't understand.
I think she's understanding it now. Like I said, I can't foresee it ending well. I can't foresee her deciding, well, you know what, the powwow is coming up, and maybe I'll stop by. I have a feeling she's probably never been to a powwow.
Someone showed me, she showed videos from being at the powwow.
Oh, so she has.
But someone asked her, this is secondhand, someone showed me on the social media. Someone asked her if she's coming to the powwow again. She said she's too busy this year.
I'm not trying, I don't want to sound like I'm taking a side on this, but the fact is, from my point of view, what I've seen is that it was fun, and then it went into downright hate mode, which was, and of course, some people get carried away. So like it's one thing to be disrespected, but to send 10 times the venom back isn't exactly, because you did send a response, and that really, I think set the bar in terms of what should have been said and what needed to be said.
Thanks for that, Joe. And I actually kind of, given all the other responses, I was expecting some venom, but I didn't get any, and no response really at all. So maybe to give her credit, maybe she's learned one thing about being a Mohawk, which is to respect your elders.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Gerald Alfred, Taiaiake, who is, of course, a noted historian, professor, and all-around good guy. I've been working in governance here in Kanawake now on the governance project for a long time. Do you think this is, next time you have a gathering, you think this is something that's going to come up?
I think it's a good learning point. It's a very good learning point. Because it does bring up issues of who is a Mohawk, and these things have been worked through, but we're obviously not settled on it because there's a lot of people that have different opinions about it. But for me, you mentioned the governance project, we do have the intention of having a process in place where we have consensus building, and to be able to come to one mind on who is a Mohawk and what you need to do in order to reintegrate into the community. Right now we don't. We have competing visions and no real governance structure on that. So among all the other areas that we need to work on, this one clearly is highlighted here. So I think it's going to come up in our meetings.
Yeah, it certainly will. Do you think that she has an opportunity to somehow make amends? It could be one of those things, well, maybe she's too busy this year, but quietly come back next year and say, you know what, I apologize, I didn't get it, and I'm going to be at the powwow. And if she made some sort of public apology, for example, would that help?
I can only speak for myself on that point, and I'd say yes, like for me personally, but I know that there's a lot more depth of feeling because of insult and disrespect that's been shown, especially among women in the community. And so I can't speak to that, but my sense is that just looking at the history of Kanawake, even the recent history, people come back around And if they acknowledge mistakes, we've all made mistakes. We've all done things and conducted ourselves in ways that have insulted or hurt people's feelings and this and that, myself included. So you need to acknowledge, you need to understand the perspective of people that you've harmed, and then you need to figure out a way to move forward. And I think that for me, and I think a lot of people that I've spoken to, there is still that open door, and it's just a question of character. It's like, do you have the humility? Do you have the strength of character to admit you were wrong and to ask for guidance from people?
Did you reach out to her, or did you assume she was going to see your post? Because I'm sure she's been looking at everything.
Yeah, somebody sent me a screenshot of a private conversation this morning where she's clearly seen what I said and was insulting in the response, but I didn't want to take it further. For me, I understand the way the business works that she's in, and so every click, every view, every share gives her money. So I don't want to give her money by clicking on her site. So I'll take the screenshots from people and then go from there. But I mean, there's a conversation happening anyway, right? And so clearly she's seen it, her family's seen it. And
that's hard, eh? That's hard because she does have family here.
Yeah, and
that's hard for them as well.
I wanted to keep it at the diplomatic level and not get into personal insult or anything like that, because I think there is still that open door.
And there needs to be, and we need to rise, sometimes rise above our own anger and find solutions. So
Yeah.
it's going to be tough. So in the meantime then, because we're running out of time here, so do you prefer with or without onions?
Cranberries, no onions.
Cranberries, no. I'm with you. Actually, over the last few years, my wife has started to really, really excel, because she started off and was like, yeah, it's okay, but the dough is a little tough sometimes. She's become really good. So now I eat it just like that. And all my life it was cranberries, never ketchup. And then other people, no, it has to be ketchup. And everybody has their own way of enjoying our meat pies. And don't even bring up Aguasasna's meat pies. This is another story for another day. Anyway, we'd like to thank you so much for taking the time. I think it was a discussion that we needed to have as a community. We needed to bring this up because there is anger out there, and we can't let anger fester. We need to discuss it, and hopefully this forum helped a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. It felt good to talk about it. Hopefully the words that we said help some people think through it, and let's hope it leads to a good resolution.
All right. Well, Nyaukoa for being with us.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
You too, Joe.
All right. Take care. And that's our show for today. We'd like to thank Taiaiake. We'd also like to thank our guests who were on a little earlier talking about some of the great events happening in our community. We have news next with Paul Grafe, and then the 1 o'clock jump with Chris Reiser. You take care, everyone. We'll see you next time. Nyaukoa dano. Onagiwahi.
What Quanoratus Wagwegum at 103.7 FM, we are CKRK. K Oscar the one Nawadana Asa FM, Kanawake, so what I'm Sade.
Askanita Westai, it is 1 o'clock, Segu, Suwagwegu, Giga Nuagari Wanagade. Good afternoon from the K103.7 newsroom. I'm Paul Grafe. It began with onions and meat pies, but quickly spread to representing Kanawake and Ongwehue people without consent. Social media content creator Nikki Apostolou goes by the moniker Native Stardust and lives in Brooklyn. Kicked up a storm with a video on making meat pies, but it was her responses to public criticism that upset many in Kanawake, of which she has ancestry. Her mother lives here, and she has spent some time in the community. One of those who posted to her about the dangers of doing so was our guest in the last hour on Dedewatara, Gerald Taiaiake Alfred.
Even after she was corrected, never corrected the statement, never went back and apologized, and never went back and said, oh, I was wrong. I got my information off the internet. Sorry, I should learn more about the true history of Kanawake. She didn't do that. She just kept right on going. And so I think that people's perceptions out there are being shaped by her, unfortunately, and this is something that can't be allowed to stand. I mean, it's a line It's a line you cross when you go from being like a clown on the internet to actually shaping people's ideas about land rights and sovereignty and so forth.